What is the secret to turning wide-ranging vision into cohesive impact? Hello and welcome to the Boostara Podcast. I am your host, James. On the Boostara Podcast, we speak to leaders in business and uncover the truths and insights from their amazing experiences. At Boostara, we help businesses boost growth, cut costs, and gain better business insights. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you, type the word growth into the comments below and I will be sure to reach out. Today, we are not joined by an inmate, despite his background. We are joined by Joel Campbell, CEO of Cove Group. Hello, Joel.
Hello.
Where are you calling us from today?
I'm actually in my office at home. I'm in my home office, which is a sort of a room at the back of my house, and it is not decorated. I can show you if you like, but it's just bare walls. There's no plaster, and actually,
well, I'm more intrigued, and I guess listeners will be as to what is behind you. I'm guessing
the
is
prison.
Shrewsbury.
That's Shepton.
Prison?
That is Shepton Mallet Prison. I imagine if I move out of the way, you'll see it. So that's Shepton Mallet Prison, which is the oldest prison in the world. So it's just over, it's 400 years this year. So it's our fourth centenary this year. So yeah, I tend to use a different backdrop for each meeting, unless I'm in my office, in which case I've got a naturally good backdrop in my office at the prison. But yeah, I'll show you later, but it is a great example of where everyone goes, "Oh, you've done really, really well." I'm like, yeah, I still haven't been able to plaster the walls within my house though, where I live. So
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I think for those of our listeners that are not familiar with yourself, with Cove Group, there'll be a lot of questions popping up. What's it got to do with prisons? So could you give us a bit of a backdrop, a bit of an introduction to yourself, to Cove Group, to the journey you've been on to getting to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll start right back at the beginning. When I was 8 years old, I realized, whether I actually consciously realized or not, that I wanted to run my own business. So I knew right from a very young age that that's what I want to do. I want to run companies. And then I went through a journey of working in lots of different industries, lots of different jobs, lots of different people, always knowing that I'd run my own company one day, never having any idea what it was going to be in, which industry it would be, what it would end up doing. I just knew that that's where it would be. And my entire embodiment of what I do is very entrepreneurial. My entire style is very much like that. And then I'd had different companies, some successes, some failures, and ultimately I wanted to build a group of companies. That was always kind of a vision I'd had and an idea I had. And in 2013, the MOJ announced they were closing 7 prisons in the UK and they would go up for sale. And in 2014, when they hit the market, I thought, "Do you know what? I'm going to buy one of these and turn it into a tourist attraction." And that's kind of the short version. The slightly longer bit to that is my wife worked at Shepton Mallet Prison in the psychology department. So she was doing offender treatment programs, so offending behavior units, basically doing psychological programs with prisoners. And I was fortunate enough to get on the back of a tour. So they used to run tours for people going into the prison environment, whether it was into rehabilitation or whether it was into sort of sentencing or whether it was into people working with prisoners when they come out with inmates when they're released, so probation workers and stuff like that. And I went on the back of one of these tours one evening, and it was fascinating. I went round. The prison was still a working prison with prisoners in it and staff and officers. And I went round for a couple of hours. I was like, this place is fascinating. If you could just get rid of the prisoners, it would make a brilliant tourist attraction. So that idea kind of sat with me in 2008. And it just sort of sat in the back of my head. And then in 2014, when the prisons came up for sale, I was in a point in my life going, what do I do next? I was like, I'm going to try and buy a prison. And that's kind of how it started, really. And I didn't take on Shepton initially, so that unfortunately wasn't successful as a bid. We got to the last 3 bidders, but we weren't successful in buying it from the MOJ. But through that journey, I guess through the tenacity in the way that I work, I met a guy who'd just bought Shrewsbury Prison in Shropshire. So he'd bought that. He had a plan to turn it into student accommodation, amongst various other things. Had a chat with him. And he said, well, I'm not doing anything with it for a year whilst it goes through planning. So do you want to take it on for a year, do what you want to do for a year, and then once I've got my plan in, you can move out and then we'll crack on. So I'm like, yeah, no worries at all. And here we are 10 years later, and we now have 3 prisons in our portfolio, 3 tourist attractions, 3 developments happening, hotels, spas, restaurants, cafes, various bits and pieces. And yeah, it kind of all just started off, hey, this would be a really cool idea.
Yeah, I think just to go off of the prisons that you that are under you, I think from what I've seen from the website, it's really in line with the kind of creative process that a lot of attractions are going through in terms of trying to bring in different customers at different points of year in different ways. It actually really interested me, but I'm just at the opposite end of the country, doing the ghost tours, doing the sleepovers, the events. I think that's quite a trending thing, really, in attractions at the minute, is how to take advantage of the the busy season, which really for a prison it should fall into the Halloween kind of ghost period, right?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
take full advantage of that, but then also bring customers from different areas of society in at different times of the year when you might suffer a sort of a low period.
Yeah, November, February. Like those are the 2 quietest months, definitely. January to a point, but yeah, November, February tend to be the two sort of quietest.
What inspired you to then, obviously you bought the prisons and then you've expanded the portfolio further to create what is Cove Group? I mean, what was the spark for you to do that and to take on this kind of business model?
So one of the key things for me was having had failed businesses. I always wanted to be able to act as a point of, I guess, information, of saying to people, not necessarily how to do it, but how to not do it. Like I can definitely tell people things to avoid. It's not necessarily, I won't always get it right, but I know how to not get it wrong. And I think when I was creating Cove Group, which originally was called something different, I went through a journey of, I knew I wanted to have, I knew where I wanted to end up in terms of the vision and the shaping of the business and the business structure with a much larger brand that people could really buy into. Whatever we did, that our customers and our staff and our stakeholders and our partners could really buy into our brand and go, that's what it stands for. And we feel very safe and secure with that. So I wanted to build an ecosystem effectively of businesses that worked and supported each other together and they flowed. So that's kind of how I started. And because of that, I'm quite picky or quite selective of therefore what fits within our brand, within our portfolio. And although I never say a company is out of our remit to, or an industry is outside of our remit to operate within or to take on or to buy or to start, there certainly is the thought process of how that fits with the bigger picture and with every other piece. And if it doesn't, I tend to sort of stay away from it a little bit more. And that's kind of how it came about. Really, it is, I guess, to a degree, quite simplistic in the sense of I look at things and go, that looks like that would be fun. That's got my attention. I can see how that will work financially. And yes, I believe we can add value to it. And those are kind of the 3 things that I look at and I build off. And if I can achieve those 3 things in an early stage, and I think it's got legs, and then that's how we go. And I think really it started to then evolve quite naturally. And what happens is I've sort of laid out that vision. I've laid out those pillars of how I look at it. That then goes through the organization. And then certainly my top tier team, my director level team, sort of the senior management team, tend to follow that same suit. And they bring different ideas, different thoughts, different ways of doing it. And that's what then gives us growth. And that's kind of really, really how it came about.
Amazing. And what's the major sort of benefits or sort of successes that an organization that falls under your umbrella could expect to gain from from coming across you, and being a part of the Cove Group?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know how to answer that without sounding really cocky or really big-headed. They get access to us, I guess, is the first thing. So I always look at it and sort of say, if we go into working with another business, if they come within our portfolio. It doesn't happen all that often. That's quite a new thing for us in terms of how I want us grow with the acquisition and the supporting and the investment side, is that I always say that they have our attention. So the way I look at this, and I'll explain that, is that if we are going to work with another business within the portfolio, we won't just do a cold hard investment. We won't just go, there's some cash, for example, and a percentage of equity comes back. We will actually look at what's required and what their need is. There'll be a percentage of equity that will come into Cove Group. But what that does is it shifts us to go, right, you now have our attention because we're invested in this. We want it to succeed. We want it to go forwards. And by doing that, they'll access all the strands that we have within our central team, within effectively our parent company of Cove, which is our marketing tier, our sales tier, our HR tier, our financing tier, the support from the directors, and those guys that have very strategic mindsets, which is quite different to mine because I'm more in vision rather than necessary strategy, and also all the way through in terms of how we deploy and how we execute. There's certain businesses that would fit within our natural portfolio. For example, if somebody needs a space to work from, depending on where they are geographically, we've probably already got that in our property world. So there is some natural kind of fits. But I always say to people, I think when we spoke previously, that you can't just use us like a consultancy. So in essence, we do almost have that feel of, we've got sales, we've got marketing, we've got HR, we've got finance, we've got deployment of strategy and everything along the ways. So therefore, it's kind of like an all-rounded agency to a degree, but you couldn't buy our services on the open market, regardless of how much you offered us. We wouldn't do it. We only work with companies that we're invested into. And predominantly, a lot of those are our own companies that we started from scratch. That happens because as an entrepreneur, my mindset is, let's do that. So we'll start something from scratch, we'll get it to a point, and I'll pass it over to the team. And then their job is to take it on and on and on. So we find ourselves quite busy doing that. And yeah, that's kind of how it works, really.
It's interesting because you said there was a previous iteration of the Cove Group before it took on its current name, right? So I'm wondering, how have you seen the sort of trends within this particular kind of business model, is what you described there? How has that changed over time? How has the whole kind of climate developed, adjusted, changed?
Yeah, so initially when I started it, it was more of a holding company. I knew that it was going to have its place as we move forwards, but what I didn't have, I kind of had the holding company without the businesses underneath. So it's effectively like I had the roof but no house, and I was just sort of floating. And what I did after that was then build the house from the foundations upwards. And what's really changed for us is over a period of time is I've had to redig and rebuild the foundations to give us more strength. And I think that's the kind of closest analogy that, I built it initially without enough structure to kind of hold the roof. And I had to keep sort of rebuilding it and learn from all of those mistakes until I could get to a really solid point. And once we built the house and it was nice and solid, we could then look at adding all the extension pieces and all the other businesses. And I think what's happened, I can speak very, very well from the tourism, the hospitality, the leisure side of things, to a degree from the property side, but certainly from those other aspects, and where that's changed over the last few years. And there's been certain things that affected us massively in 2020 worldwide, which we just don't mention anymore. As to how we've had to move. And I think the biggest thing for us, and I've always tried to run our companies very much like an entrepreneurial-led business, so very much like a startup, so we can pivot and we can shift very quickly to the changes within the climate and the changes within the industries. I think, unfortunately, for something like tourism, leisure, hospitality, they are more susceptible to damage from changes, and therefore you have to really consider what that looks like. And there's numerous factors that have a big impact on that. But the biggest thing that we did, and the biggest thing that I made a mind shift on, and then made a business shift on, was definitely coming through. I'd seen it in 2019, and I had it in my head, but 2020 really kicked it in, which was diversifying our customer base within the existing portfolio. So I wanted to diversify the portfolio, so we weren't just in a single industry, and therefore we weren't under pressure if that industry struggled. We weren't, it wasn't going to collapse the whole house effectively. But I also knew within those industries, we need to diversify our customer base beyond where we were. What was the traditional kind of, you can't see me doing it. Let me turn my camera off. 2 seconds. Let me see if I can do it, because I make so many hand actions. Let me see. Oh, I've just turned my camera off altogether. Hold on 2 seconds. I've got it somewhere. There it is. This will give people a great insight into where I am. Facts. I don't know if I can turn it off. Oh, hold on, what does it say? Oh, I can't change it whilst it's being recorded, so you're stuck with it. Anyway, I'm doing this. Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying. Sorry, I go off on tangents. Yeah, ultimately, what was the norm and what's seen as the norm for tourism in terms of the customer base? I was actually reading that just this morning, and my natural instinct is to go against the grain. If someone tells me I can't do something, I'm just going to do it. I'm the guy that don't press the red button. You know that thing's getting pressed. So, and I love it. I thrive off that. So I think that's been, I guess, hopefully that answers your question to a degree, is that's been the biggest sort of shift for us, is a mind shift, and then the actual execution of it and how we do that within our businesses, within the industries. And technology's been a massive jump. I mean, as we spoke about AI for us in the last, I guess maybe it's as much as a year and a half. It must be.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it, but it must be as much as a year and a half. And that's been a huge shift. And now I watch the team and I see myself using AI in a way that speeds us up so much. And it always makes me think about how much time we've spent in the past doing those things that now take us literally sometimes seconds. And that has been a massive game changer, because for me, it's about the deployment of time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've tried to really focus on over the last few years, and I've really tried to get the behavior into our team as well, is how we value our time, and how that goes deeper than like time is money is just a throwaway phase, and what that really looks like. And once we sort of got that clicking, that has made a difference, especially, again, I sort of say in our senior team, who are more in that kind of strategic space, that thought process of how you do time, and then trying to filter that down even to the bottom lines within the organizations, is really, really probably one of our big game changers, and one of the big successes I think we're going to see.
Yeah, that's an amazing insight. And I think I'll come back to that. That idea of valuing your time. How much is your time worth in relation to general time, not just spent on particular tasks, right? In terms of AI usage, especially. But going back to what you said before, I think really interesting. Obviously, you said you've done businesses that failed. You've gone through that iteration process, right? But I've heard the same. My old boss out in China, he used to tell me 90% of the businesses you start will fail.
Yeah.
That's just a fact, right?
Yeah, it is.
But the point is not, what's that sentence that, what is the opposite of success? It's not failure, it's giving up, right? It's the failure is a part of success. You've got to try again.
Absolutely. It's part of the journey.
You know what works, what doesn't work, right? I guess, for you, having gone through that process, you've seen in the past, you can see what's worked, what hasn't worked. How do you, as a business owner, at this level, how do you future-proof your business, future-proof the businesses that you are operating? How does that look in your mind in terms of looking 5-10 years ahead? And what is the state of these businesses going to be like then?
Yeah, so I think that, the first thing is about learning from mistakes. I think that, there's that definition of insanity as doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And I use that all the time. I say that constantly. And I think learning from mistakes is a big one, but also being willing to adapt. And I spent a long time. One of the first issues I had in one of the first companies I had where it really struggled was PR. And, I went down a wrong route with PR. I didn't really know what I was doing, where I was going, spent far too much money on it. It just killed our cash flow. And what that did was it then turned me off PR. And I went, PR's a waste of time. I'm never doing that again. And it's taken a long time for me to actually understand where PR fits and sits and what the benefits are and where that goes. So that was, in the moment, it was right to kind of go away from it, but also it's about how you come back to it. So I think that being willing to learn from your mistakes, but still be confident enough to go, okay, well, actually, maybe that wasn't fully in that world. Maybe some of that was me. Maybe some of that was this instance, that is, and then going back and doing it and trying to make those mistakes. And one of the things we're just in the stages of doing it at the moment, company wide, and it's going to probably take us 6 months to fully roll out, is trying to instill within every single employee within our organization, and to a degree, some of our partners, is it's okay to fail, because that's, as you said, that's part of the learning. What we need to do as a company is encourage all of our people to come up with ideas that will improve our business and what we do, wherever it is, whatever aspects. I've got some great examples of that, and be willing to put those forward, confident that some of those will fail and will be demonstrated as failures. But that's okay, because that's how we get better. That's how we learn. It's like the light bulb, isn't it? How made times Edison made the light bulb. The challenge as a company, and the challenge, I guess, as the CEO or as the owner, the founder, the person in charge at the top level, is to make sure that you're not got so many mistakes happening at the same time that it becomes detrimental to the business. So you've got to allow mistakes, but you've also got to make sure that there are far less mistakes than the successes, and you don't want huge issues happening. And when I say huge mistakes, I always think of Blockbuster and Netflix. I mean, what a cataclysmic mistake there. What a awful mistake to make, that one. That's a business killer. So I think that's part of our balance. But in terms of going forwards, again, I've had to really kind of do a lot of inward searching, probably over the last couple of years, and actually even more so over just the last few days. And even today's been quite interesting for me with some of the conversations I've had yesterday and today with banks and finances and where we go next, is accepting where I'm not particularly strong and where we need strength, which I can't bring, and how we do that, and accepting the weaknesses and those challenges within each of the roles and trying to plug those. And as I said to you, strategy, I can do it. I just don't really enjoy it. And because I don't enjoy it, I'm like, I don't really want to do that. So therefore it doesn't get done. So what I've had to do is make sure that I've employed somebody, and we've got somebody within our business that's really strong strategically wise. Yes, they still have great vision, but their strength is strategy and deployment. And my strength is, in the vision and like super, super detail, but really, really high level vision. And then together that really works neatly. And then having somebody that can execute as well. So it's just kind of filling those gaps and recognizing that. And I think that's been what's given us our strength and our foundation to move forwards. And from here, realistically, we can kind of go in any direction we like. Yes, we've got specialties in industry, but there is no reason why we couldn't go in a different direction. Because we have the skill set internally and the mindset.
Bringing in the best people that are better than you, it's a difficult thing for some owners to do, right? But it's so important if you want to grow, is you've got to bring in bring in people that are smarter than you, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a real thing, because it leaves you super vulnerable. And as the owner, I think it leaves you really vulnerable, and lots of business owners don't want to do it. You want to be the smartest person in the room. And I'm never quite sure whether this is true or not when I say it. I don't know. I'm split. But I walk into a room, and my ethos is, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the stupidest person in the room, but I don't want to be the smartest. Because if I'm the smartest person in the room, well, our business is probably in trouble, because I don't run it. Like, other people run it. So I'm not sure I want to be the smartest person in the room. And again, at different points, the business needs different things. So, you'll go through stages where actually it needs real focus deployment, and you'll go through stages where actually it needs growth vision, whether you're going horizontally, vertically, what's happening within it. So you do go through those different phases. And again, as the company grows, it changes and it becomes a different entity that can't be operated in the way it was before. For example, we can't operate with 70 staff in the way that we could when we had 7. When it was 7 people in one room, it's different. That's like operating a small team. When you've got 70 across, three attractions, 2 countries, it doesn't work like that. You can't pivot as quick. And it's the same with, your monthly churn, for example. I can remember when we had to sort of secure £12,000 a month as our running costs. And if we were struggling, which happened on some months, I could just jump in and I could get involved with sales, and I could probably help and support to get enough sales over the line to make what we needed to. When your burn rate, or when your costs are £250,000 a month, one person can't jump in and pull those deals together like that. It just changes. So, I think that kind of puts together where it is, and therefore employing the right people is key. Employing people that are smarter than you, I think is a really smart decision to make, but also recognizing where the gaps are. So, I know I'm not good here, so I should employ somebody that's here. And then we fold into all the cultural side of things, all the skill sets, and actually whether people can do a job. Recruitment's hard. It's tough. Getting the right people is probably been one of the bigger learning curves I've had to go through.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of, the smarter people and also disruption, you mentioned before with COVID, where do you see AI going? Where do you see AI impacting, yourself and the whole group going forward? Because obviously we're in this infancy period of AI uptake. It's been, I think you've said it about right. First 1 to 2 years, we've seen fast development of AI technology, but it is only set to improve over the next sort of 5-year period. Where do you see it evolving and impacting groups such as yourself?
It will be dependent on industry, obviously. The first thing we've seen is speed and time in terms of, and to give an example of that. So, you have a meeting, for example. We obviously met, the other day. I had a meeting this morning with our COO and with somebody in Shrewsbury from the Business Improvement District. So we had a 35-minute meeting, which we were discussing all the things sort of locally for Shrewsbury, what we wanted to do there, what was happening, all the developments, all that kind of stuff. So what we did was I just had AI do the note taking, and at the end of the meeting, I'd actually already built the agenda with AI previously in terms of going, this is what we want to cover, this is who's going to be there, and it structures it for me. Then we use that agenda, we run it, AI everything off the meeting, so it transcribes it, put it straight back into AI, and it pulls everything out in terms of who's saying what. It will produce all the minutes for me, but more importantly, it'll produce all the action points. And so it will do all of that, and it does that literally in seconds. So what would have taken me time, either another person to be typing the notes as we go, or somebody to type the notes afterwards and then put it all together, or whether it's me typing the notes and then doing all the action points, is done literally in about a minute and a half post the meeting. It's completed. We then use it to put that into another system. So we'll use Asana, for example, as a project management tool. Other management tools are available, but we use Asana. I'll tag them, I'll plug them. We have to pay for it still. They should give it to us for free for this. So sorry, we use Asana. There goes my ADHD brain. We use Asana, and what I'll do is I'll say to AI, produce this into a downloadable CSV that I can upload into Asana for all the tasks, and it will just create it. I'll download the CSV, I'll upload it as a fresh project straight to Asana. It allocates everything. I literally have to just run through and go, yep, that's all fine. Check the dates, check the assignments, click live, and it's done. And, that takes 5 minutes kind of max off the back of a meeting, and everyone knows exactly what they have to do, and off we go. So that has been really good for us from an admin perspective with majority of our team just in that one area.
Yeah.
I think where we're going to start seeing it going is about what AI can do for us in terms of, specifically in attractions, in terms of the integration and the interpretation of history, heritage, and the spaces. And I'm starting to look at, it's great when we have actors in place, it's great when we have characters in place, and there's always going to be the need and the requirement for that. But I'm seeing where we have like interpretation boards, so literally boards of information, or where we have audio guides, or we have video screens just replaying the same thing over and over. Where does AI fit there? And actually, I'm going to use the word replace. How does AI replace that and enhance what's happening? And one of the things I look at a lot is not how we can catch up with our competitors, but how we can leapfrog them. And I think for us, AI is going to be, absolutely pivotal in terms of doing that and where we go. In other areas, hotel designs, for example, I'm a very visual person. So I know how I want my hotel rooms to look. And I know kind of the feel I want for the spa. But I can't draw for toffee. I can't sketch for anything. I hate it art. So trying to explain it to somebody is quite a laborious process. Sitting there with our designer and our architect going, well, this is kind of what I want, and this is kind of the feel, and this kind of look. It's a very, very slow time. And all that time costs a lot of money because they're not cheap. Whereas what I'm able to do with AI is tell it what I want it to look like, and the feel and the theme, and it will produce an image for me. And I can go, actually, I really like that bit, but I don't like that bit. Where it's got even better is I just do that in the car. So I'll be in the car and I'll be driving and I'll have a conversation with AI. I'll literally just turn it on as if I was on the phone to somebody, and I'll chat to it. And I'll be like, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I'm trying to build. And it will do that for me. So I'll do it in that environment. And that tends to happen in planning. So I tend to do that in sort of all the planning phases, all the document phases. So I'll build everything from like events through to proposals, through to concepts, through to maybe a marketing idea I've had. I saw something this morning and I was like, that's really cool. I wonder how we could put that into our business. I was thinking about it. So I just open up AI. I'll have a conversation with it. I've had this little thought. I should mention this to Kieran, one of our marketing guys. Go, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And it'll put it together and it'll go, do you want me to get an email ready for Kieran? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'll produce it. I'll just send it to him. And he knows how I've created it. So it just works. And then we've built that so we can share with each other through that space. So we do lots of stuff like that. And then our independent teams are using it for various different aspects and deployments, I guess, within their own world, some of which I'm aware of and some of which I won't be. And I think we as an organization, we're just scratching the surface. We are using the most simplistic version of what the capabilities are or will be to speed up and to enhance kind of what we're doing. And I guess my job is to look at what else is coming down the line and how do we utilize that within our world, within our ecosystem. So yeah, and I guess there's lots of companies out there that I look at and go, God, they're doing this. They're using AI to like scour depth into the code and figure out like every aspect of their building work and like, every kind of plug socket where it is and whether it fits, and like, really kind of like far more intelligent stuff than we're using it for, far more in-depth stuff than we're using it for. But there's the other companies that just, I won't use AI. I won't use AI because it is putting people out of jobs. I'm like, oh, it's
Yeah. It's really interesting. You remind me. So I lived in Shanghai, and Shanghai, if you've ever been there, or if anyone listening's been there, is, I'd just say basically it's advanced. It's an advanced place.
Yeah.
5G is just available everywhere. It's not like where I am now. I can't get a signal at the leisure centre. I have to go.
That's
It's standard everywhere in Shanghai.
Put a man on the moon in the 60s, but can't make a phone call from your bathroom.
Exactly, right. In Shanghai now, I'm seeing videos come out of literal robots playing around in the the apartment complex, like playgrounds with kids, right?
Yeah.
So, and Shanghai's always been that way for the 10 years that I lived there. It's just very tech heavy, tech first. And, if you think places like Shanghai, they're ahead of the curve, right? With AI uptake, tech uptake. We are below them, right? We're below what is happening in other cities, other countries. If you are then also below the standard in the UK or within your particular industry, then you're really far behind, right? And I think it's exactly the perspective that you've got there, is looking, how do you leapfrog, how do you take advantage of what is coming, what is there?
Yeah.
Because it is, yes, some people have that that moral point of view about using AI, but I do believe it's a lot of the times it's unfounded, in that perspective of it taking people's jobs. That's one side of the story that you
Hmm.
might see from someone who is doing a manual data entry type job, type work, right? We don't have
Yeah.
shorthand typists anymore, right? Why?
Yeah.
Because there's no need for them anymore. So those people had to upskill, get to high leverage type work, and it's just the same. We see AI now as taking away those manual data entry, time consuming tasks that we don't get any real value from. The high value activity, though, I mean, they're still needed, but the high value activity is conversation. It's meetings, it's speaking with people, speaking with candidates, speaking with clients. That's high value. And if we can use AI to get rid of the admin stuff, then of course we want to we want to do that, right?
Yeah.
I guess a good question for yourself, Joel, is there a part of your operations that, if you could bring in AI technology, some kind of technology, to just take that part of your work function away, so you don't have to deal with it, what would have the biggest impact on the business?
That's a great one. That is a good question. I don't think for me there's any part that AI can take away that would have that great impact, but that's purely because of the job that I do. So as a founder, as the company owner and founder, you go through a phase of being the owner operator. Very, very traditional for any business starting out, any entrepreneurial business for start. You're the only operator, owner and operator. And majority of companies will retain that through their entire lifespan until they're sold or whatever happens with them. I'm moving, and I'm certainly in the transition, but I'm very much getting there, to an owner, not an operator. So I've got teams of people that do the operation within. So therefore, my role's becoming quite different. It's going, how do we take this, whatever it might be, take a prison, for example, how do we take the 4.5 acres of prison real estate in Shepton Mallet, and how do we create that into a business that does all the things that, in my mind, as an individual, I feel a business should do, but also how does it kick back and give back and support others that fit? So we do a huge amount of educational programs because I feel like that's the right thing we should do in that environment. We can have an impact in future change for generations around crime. So I think we've got a responsibility to do that. It's very hard, I think, at this stage for AI to replace my brain, because that's effectively what we're asking it to do. And I got challenged on this not long ago by a solicitor, who I very much firmly put back in their place, because they turned around and said, well, like, anyone can do this. I was like, well, if anyone can do it, why aren't they? Like, and another person once said to me, don't make the mistake of thinking you're the only Joel in the world. And I just pushed back and went, don't you make the mistake of thinking there's more than one Joel in the world, because we're all individual in that sense. So I think replacing me is quite tricky in that sense. And it's the same with majority of our team. But I think that replacing roles is where it fits. And it is, any change in any time that we've gone through, you will see that shift, won't you, of job losses and such like that. And it is a shift. And, we've seen that in manufacturing. We've seen that when the internet came out, huge change. We see that in letters being delivered, so on and so forth. So I think it's about the shift in the pivot. But again, I think for us, the biggest change is going to be how we utilize what's there to make our life easier. Emails is a great example. Before there was internet and emails, we used to have to send everything on letters.
Yeah.
Before there was social media, for example, we used to advertise in papers and on TV. And so there's a change. So it's about how we adopt that. And I think early adopters will see success when it really kicks in, and late adopters will be playing catch up. I'm trying to think of what it replace. I can't think of anything at the moment that AI will completely replace, certainly in our industry, where there's not a person needed at some stage in the process. And even the most advanced bits that we're using it for, it might get us 90% of the way there, but it still needs that final 10%. And
Yeah.
I guess an example of that, yesterday I was rewriting an event that we've operated for years. So I was rewriting Prison Break for 2026. I've been working with a few of our staff, gathering ideas, feedback from the front line of what happens. But it's an immersive experience. So it's created through, it is a creation, like writing a book's a creation, or writing a play is probably a more accurate descriptive of it. And I use AI to work alongside me. So I'll come up with ideas and thoughts and puzzles, and structures and characters and storylines. And I'll be pumping that into AI as I go, and it will provide me structure on the way back, which just speeds me up. But the ideas come from me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's at a stage when there ever will be where it can replace that. It's interesting, though, because I ask it to create imagery for me, for example, and it can do a far better job of creating an image than I ever could. And that's actually, I should flag that. That's been a good game changer for us. We went through a period earlier this year where we had some really difficult exits from some employees that left. And when they left, one of the things they wanted to press on was the fact that we weren't allowed to use their images anymore. Like, and we have the images of our own people and various deployments, and a lot of time in marketing and advertising and stuff like that. We're like, you can't use our images. And whilst we're allowed to legally, we decided not to fight it. So actually it was like, God, we need to replace this. Getting photographers out, models out, replacing all of that's quite long. So actually we just used AI. We're like, actually, we want to create this image of this person in this environment doing this. It creates it, upload it onto the website, into the documents, and we're done. And we own the image because we've created it.
Headache over.
Yeah, and it again, it's faster. It saves us lots of cost. And we see that now with videos. I just look at my social media feeds and I'm like, is that real? Is that not real? And I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the first sort of examples to hit the media of people, I don't know, I guess, committing crime or doing whatever it is. You go, no, that wasn't me. That's AI generated.
We had a PSHE consultant on about a month back, and he said, deep fakes, they're going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And schools need to have policy on how to react when a deep fake involving teachers, students, appears. This is a situation that hasn't happened, but it will happen.
Yeah.
People need to look ahead and to predict this and then know how they're going to react. And the same, when I lived in Shanghai, there was big discussions about self-driving cars, which are coming out now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The big thing with self-driving cars is that they will be, as they get more advanced, they'll be programmed. And imagine a situation when a child runs across the road chasing a ball, cars coming along 50 miles an hour. The car will have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Either crash into the child and thus save the driver, or veer off, roll into a hedgerow and you save the child, kill the driver.
Maybe a morality decision, isn't it?
A morality decision, right?
Yeah.
So the AI within the car will have to be programmed to either, in that kind of situation, preserve the driver or preserve the person or the thing on the road, right? So how does that then work in courts of law? What sorts of issues is that going to? It's so many, right? And I think that's the part of that's the deeper, darker sort of area, I suppose.
That's a reality. My car self drives.
Yeah.
yeah. It's I still have to have influence on it, but it will self-drive. It will park itself. The new version that we're going to get in March, I can drive from my phone. I can get out of the car and park it with park it on my mobile phone. But when it's done in convenience, like when you go to airports, for example, and it's such tight parking space, I'll get out of my car and I'll park it off my phone. And obviously in America, I was chatting to a friend who was in LA, and he said they've got self-driving Ubers. And he said it is so weird. It's so odd to get into a car with nobody. Yeah, I totally hear that. And again, it comes back to, I think it was iRobot, wasn't it, with Will Smith, where it was just, computers and robots everywhere. And I think that's where we're going. what that looks like, how we get there will, be different in each country. And I think that's, but well, maybe you want to get too deep into it. I don't know. That's I guess part of the focus. But, when does that replace military? Like, when do you suddenly have robots going in? And I do think, though, and I can't remember if we spoke about this, but I went to a show the other day, which was a restaurant and takeaway innovation expo. And in there was a robotic company, and they effectively had created AI robots, and it was cool. It was a really cool stand. It was getting loads of traction. Loads of people were going to see it. And I looked at it, I can see why, because you've got a robot there. There's chatting to people as if it's a person, but it's a robot. So everyone's like, oh my God, this is really cool. It's like loads of photos being taken, loads of film. So I was chatting to the international sales director that was there. And we were talking about like the deployment of where they're using these robots and this AI. Because it was, to a degree, it was quite basic and simplistic. It was effectively utilizing a visual, I guess, kind of cortex. It was using cameras through the eyes to see what was in front of it, and it could answer questions. So, what am I looking at? And that's what they were using was, tell us what you can see, and it would describe what was in front of it. But I guess to a degree, relatively basic AI, and the robotics were just moving the face for facial expressions. And they were saying they were using it in, doctors' surgeries and in offices, especially in the US, and it was replacing receptionists in that sense. And I had a conversation with one of my colleagues, and God, I'd feel really uncomfortable about going and chatting to a robot like in the doctors. And I was like, yeah, but right now you go in and you probably check in with an iPad.
Yeah.
And they're like, I do. I was like, so actually it might be more personable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as we were going through it, it struck me that their business model was going to be a barrier, was going to be quite detrimental to the rollout of what they were trying to achieve. And I wondered if that was going to slow down the actual industry effectively. And it just kind of occurred to me that all of this intelligence, because these guys are super smart. I mean, these are robotic scientists effectively, that what they're creating, and in there, they've kind of almost forgotten the business model, or it's not being looked at. And therefore it's actually going to be really hard for companies to embed that next step of AI into their business, because it's not going to be affordable. So I don't know how that's going to look in the future, but I guess coming back to basics, and a lot of companies now, and I'm really pleased to see it, a lot of software companies, a lot of service-based systems we have. Asana's a good one, Hootsuite's another one, Pipedrive, which is our CRM platform, Xero, which is our accountancy platform. So I'm going to talk about our business specifically, obviously 365. They all have AI plugins integrated. A lot of the social channels do now, so you can actually use the integrated native system of AI within it. So you don't even have to go to GPT, or you don't have to go to Copilot, or wherever it might be. You can use those, and that's really useful because analyzing data, I think, is probably, if I was starting from scratch, or if I was advising another business owner, and if it was an SME, I would be saying to them, use AI to help plan what you're doing for the next 12 months and use it to really look at where your company is now. So all the data you have, put that into AI and let that work out what that's going through. And that's as simplistic as, like, you could do that with a greengrocers or a coffee shop. Take all of your sales data, like what you're selling, when you're selling it, all that information, which you should have, plug it all into AI and ask it to give you your trends. And then ask it, how would you staff this coffee shop based on this? And I always want to make sure I'm giving customer service to this person. I always make sure this is the fundamental basis of our business and our core values. And it will help build your business model. And you can just make those small tweaks and you'll suddenly see huge improvements. And you can even have it, creating the rotoring systems and everything kind of coming with it, but also looking at then, where should we market? How should we market? What's our demographic? And I think for business owners coming into it, you're learning as you go. AI will just help you speed that learning up.
Exactly. So, why wouldn't you use it? It's a resource there.
It's like using a calculator in a maths exam.
And you've still got to have that single, your own analysis, your own critique. Yeah. But it's, if you've got something very intelligent there that can look at it and give you ideas, utilize it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I always think it is literally like using a calculator in a maths exam.
yeah.
Why wouldn't you take a calculator into a maths exam with you?
Mm,
To me,
mm.
it just seems crazy not to.
I mean, looking into the future, Joel, what does the future have in store for you guys? What's the plan over the next sort of 6 month, 1 year period?
Oh, we're probably bankrupt by then. We'll probably have gone under. We started something different. I don't know. Yeah, everyone's sold everything. We'll be off. Um, I it's a really, I guess it's an easy question, but the reality is as well, because of the way that I operate, it's probably not as planned as well as it should be, and that's another shift that we're taking. I mean, the expectation, the want, and I guess the dream of it at the moment, the vision of it for the next sort of 6 months, is to really make sure that we've pivoted well enough in our attraction world. So in our attraction division, is that we've pivoted well enough that we've not, because we're nice and stable, but I'd like us to start seeing different growth. And I think the market and just the whole, certainly the UK, has shifted in terms of how it spends, and especially in disposable income, what it does with that. So I think to really get us ahead of the curve, have that really, we understand it, but really deployed. So we're far further in front. I'm watching other attractions, competitors, that just haven't even seen it coming. They're just not seeing what's almost already there, and they're still doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We're already well past that. So I think getting that really moving in our attraction world is a very sensible place for us. The hotel developments, getting our hotels, getting effectively trying to get spades into ground, because that ultimately is a marker of we're moving forwards. And AI is not going to replace that at the moment. AI is not going to put spades in the ground for me. So getting those going, and really, I would like to spend a fair bit of time now enhancing our brand and our awareness, which will take me back to PR, and really making people aware of Cove Group, what we do, what we stand for, what we're trying to achieve, and actually how that can be something that people can get involved with. So I'm looking at different ways of doing that around the hotel side, and how we're going to execute that and deploy that effectively. But yeah, I think for me, it's just about balancing the journey of business, family, and health, and how that works. And I think I'm just trying to get us to a point where we can grow without killing ourselves at the same time. I think it's hard because, yeah. And again, it's very different for me. If you spoke to our staff, some of which, are paid much closer to the minimum wage bracket, they would have a very different goal for what our business should be doing over the next sort of 6 months. But my job is to make sure that everyone that we employ, everyone that we're connected to, is secured, and that future looks bright, and we can continue to move, and then obviously we can continue to grow.
Amazing, yeah. What does an ideal sort of partner look like? If anyone listening that is interested.
I think if it's a business that's folding into the group, or a business that's sort of joining the group and using the wider ecosystem to help grow, there really isn't a limit. It's more about the person, and I always look more to the individual than I do to the business necessarily. And I think that's quite key. So for me, it's always, and I do the same thing with our staff, and certainly our top tier staff, is about that willingness and that hunger to succeed. And the hunger is a really big thing for me at the moment. It's something that's really on my radar, about really wanting to do something, but also having the right reasons behind it. So I don't want to go into business because I want to be really rich. You're going to fail. You're 100% going to fail. So it's having the right reasoning behind it. So I think that's that. But we look at any sort of business, and I look at a lot of businesses going to administration or going to insolvency, and I think those are companies that we would certainly work with quite a lot, because they've generally got good ideas and good concepts, but there's been something wrong in the execution. And recently we looked at a seaweed company a year ago. We looked at a manufacturing company. We've looked at other attractions. we've looked at various marketing agencies because it's a huge part of what we do. We've looked at various event companies. And we've connected to lots of different spaces within industry to sort of see what fits. So I think there's those. If we were spinning it on his head and going, what does an ideal partner in terms of like investor side look like, or partners that come to work with us? Because, we've got a certain amount of information and knowledge, but not all of it.
Yeah.
We'd look at, people that have been in the industries that we're in, they've grown it bigger. So, hotel partners, for example, is a big one for us. Building our first hotel, figuring out what that looks like. But I do, so I think those are kind of the spaces. I think it's the same with people wanting to come and work for us. It's about people that have something they can offer. They can see how that would fit, and they can see how they could benefit our business. And am I yet to see it? I think I've seen it a couple of times, but people to sort of push me on social media or message me on LinkedIn and go, I want to work for you, and this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to improve your business. And it's a hard mindset, but I think that's those are kind of the key things that I guess I would look for.
What are the best contact details to get you on, Joel? Anyone feels
probably any of the social media channels, I think. So yeah, I tend to be on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram a fair bit. Those bring at 3 and an X and stuff like that. So it's all just I think it's all just at Joel S. Campbell or Joel Seb Campbell. But you'll find me. I'm pretty easy to find. I am, funny enough, I'm going to be releasing a WhatsApp community in the next few weeks. Might take a month or so to get it finalized, where basically I'm just going to open up my phone to anybody and go, hey, look, here's the number, just hit it up. So I think we'll go down that road.
Well, I will put your contact details below for anyone that wishes to reach out or to join.
Just not my email. Just don't put my email on my mobile number at the moment.
Well, definitely on LinkedIn. So if people want to join,
absolutely.
Reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure.
Get vetted from Joel and
Do you get hit up on LinkedIn with just like all the sales messages, just like random people trying to sell you everything?
I think everyone does. They don't
know
that.
Yeah. And I think that for me in LinkedIn specifically, it's just trying to avoid that. Like put that first line as something really interesting. Otherwise it just gets missed. So. But
yeah. Brilliant. Well, yeah, I'll put the contact details below for your website, not your mobile number. But I guess, Joel, in summary, amazing insights. I think the things that I definitely take out the most is, as a business leader, it's okay to fail. Just keep on trying again, iterate again, because you will find what works, right?
Yeah.
Hire people that are smarter than you. Don't shrink away from that, because that is the thing that can really help you grow and get to that next level. And when it comes to AI, it can probably, for some aspects of your particular industry or your business, it can do maybe up to 90% of a particular task, but it maybe can't do the whole lot. That's going to be very different for every industry, every role. Yeah. But Joel, thank you very much for joining. An absolute pleasure having you on today.
No, you're very welcome.
Brilliant. And thank you everyone for listening. Please like and share this video so we can get this message out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much.